Alrighty, welcome to Late Night with Smitty, morning edition. Pleased to be joined by Peter Young, formerly of CTV Winnipeg. So yes, thanks Peter for coming on again. It's almost been a 2 year hiatus, as I was saying before I pressed record, and it was around this time in 2023 and that sort of thing. And you told us how you kind of got into the business, and then we were kind of conversing on social media, and he said, "Hey, if you ever want to talk about that Sun Bowl," and that was during Hurricane Milton, I'd gladly come on and talk about it. So we can talk about that, and we can talk about anything else you want to talk about.
Well, I hope that I don't look as bad as I appear to look right now in your monitor because I'm cut in half now, so I'm only, there's the other half of me.
Okay.
I've been battling, I've been battling like the cold from like a chest cold for a month now, and so if I start coughing uncontrollably,
Right.
that's it, and that's why I sound like I do and probably look like I do. That thing just won't go away.
Hey, that's all good. It's that type of season. So, um, yeah, unfortunately,
And
right?
I'm sorry though that I'm sorry to see that your Christmas present is hanging on the wall because I hate to tell you this, but the Ravens are going to beat the Bills and then they're going to beat the Chiefs. So I feel bad that your gift will be tainted.
Yeah, it's I appreciate the advanced condolences, and three out of five ain't bad. It makes up for the D Ford offside. Yes, I still talk about it, and it's been a great run. If you would have told me last year, I would have said the Chiefs. It would have stopped in Buffalo, but there they went. The Ravens were, if they would have run the ball more in that AFC Championship game last year, they probably would have beat the Chiefs. I'm not sure why they didn't run the ball, but that's on them.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what 3 weeks of non-competitive football has on the few players that were rested in the final week. So
Right.
then they had obviously the bye to this week, and so they're I don't know. I think Mahomes was more hurt than he admitted, or that the club admitted. So the rest obviously did him good. I don't think for a guy with his ability, the rust will be that significant. Um, and so I see them getting by the Texans easily. But barring severe injury, you just never know who's going to get hurt in a game. And man, the playoffs are so different. Everybody hits like harder than they do in the regular season, it appears.
Mhm.
Um, it's been some very violent football, and a lot of helmet to helmet stuff that hasn't been called, and a lot of guys have gone down. So I guess it's whoever answers the bell. I think the 8 teams left are fairly healthy. Obviously, Detroit and KC are extremely healthy. Um, I don't know. I think Detroit comes out of the other side. I don't know about you. I think that. I think Washington showed well against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay blew it, of course, when Baker fumbled the ball when they were probably driving for the winning field goal, so that didn't help. But
Nope.
regardless, I think that in my mind it's going to be, and this is sad for you, that it'll be the Ravens and the Lions in the Super Bowl. But I could be just 100% wrong too.
Right, and that's all part of guessing and making the predictions. So, I mean, I would say the Chiefs are a very the 15-2 record. I mean, a lot of games, right with field goal in with the Chargers, a fumbled snap on Black Friday versus the Ravens. It's been touch and go, and I'm not sure exactly how they've pulled this off, but here they are. Adrian Hutchinson could be back for the Lions. So, barring how far they go, um, we saw they couldn't really stop Buffalo in that game when they lost 48 to 42. So, um, some fascinating stuff, right? And that's why the storylines are just always
Yeah.
tremendous in the NFL.
And I mean, who would expect, a quarterback can have a terrible day.
Mhm.
But you don't expect to see either the Lions or the Chiefs have a quarterback that has a bad day. I didn't think that Allen looked that great until the second half, against Denver.
Mhm.
And I was a little concerned there. But last night, I mean, Sam Darnold was spectacular all season, and he just did nothing last night. In fact, he's a free agent, and I don't even know if the Vikings bring him back after that performance.
No, well, exactly right. That was the narrative going in. Or maybe there was talk of maybe trading McCarthy, but I don't think you do that now because you had your opportunity. And I think once the Lions lost that game, or once the Vikings lost the game to the Lions, it was like, oh boy, here we go again. The
Yeah,
Gary Anderson ghosts start coming out.
yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe Kevin O'Donnell went for it on fourth down, right before the half. Like, punt the ball away. Like, I just don't.
Hey, every but it's difficult to think of yourself in a situation like that with all the pressure you have,
Yeah.
and sometimes you don't make rational decisions in the heat of that moment.
Mhm.
And it's just like I can't remember what game it was the day before where the coach just blacked out as far as the clock ticking down, and he still had two timeouts, and he let 20 seconds go off the clock before he realized that he could still call a timeout. So with all that pressure, and you've got somebody in your ear the whole time, and you've got an assistant on the sideline, he doesn't want to second guess the head coach and say, why are we not calling timeout? Or the quarterback himself who has that ability. So you let 20 seconds run off when there's only 40 seconds left, puts you in a pretty tight spot. And so a lot of that, I think, becomes reaction to the pressure of the moment.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so a coach might make we're going to go for it on fourth down on impulse because of the pressure, the crowd, his own personal reaction to the scenario on the field where he thinks we can make this one. That might not be the best decision, coach. But
Mhm.
who second guesses the guy calling the plays?
Well, right. I mean, we see Dan Campbell getting second guessed all the time, right? And it was Meg
Yeah.
last year. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, when you got that pressure, like we're just sitting on our couches, like call timeout. And again, we saw that on American Thanksgiving with the Bears. Like, why aren't you calling
Oh, that
timeout?
was embarrassing. That was
Right.
like that was embarrassing. So, oh, here's a good one.
Hmm.
So just last night, of course, that's the big NFL news. The Vikings just dumping bad on that one. But how about the Cowboys? They wait this long. They deny the Bears the chance to interview McCarthy, and then they just gas him last night. Well, they say mutual parting, but they gas him last night. And so does Dion come in now?
Well, that is the chatter, right? And I think, yeah, McCarthy's contract ended today, or sometime this week. The Dion thing, it kind of plays well to Jerry's world. But we saw this with Jimmy Johnson. It works well for a while, then you're out. Bill Parcells works for a while, then you're out. Um, I think there would be pardon the pun. I think there would be a lot of primetime games for the Cowboys.
That's the toughest coaching job in the NFL
Mhm.
because Jerry Johnson runs the show regardless what you
Yeah,
say.
right.
And when your owner has that much involvement, um, the head coach is a puppet. And so I don't know if that's such an attractive job anymore in Dallas because of that.
Well, no, you look at the Chiefs. Clark Hunt, he lets Brett Veach do his thing. He lets Andy Reid do his thing, and they're all kind of on the same page. And he just, he does the photo ops, and he just lets us do
Yeah.
just do your job, right? With Kraft, maybe there was a bit of tension with Belichick, but it's not necessarily. Yeah, it may be America's team per se with Dallas, but I think that narrative has changed, and you haven't won a Super Bowl since Super Bowl 30. And Yeah, there's definitely a culture there, and I get it. You bought the team, but put somebody in charge. Put football people in charge.
Yeah, and I don't think Belichick. For a while, I thought Belichick was going to make the jump back to the NFL, even after he signed in North Carolina.
Mhm.
He does have an out clause. It's a very expensive out clause. Um, but now that he's, assembling his coaching staff in North Carolina, I think he's probably going to stay there. And I know that the last weekend of the regular season, um, the owner of Jacksonville had him in a private suite, and I had a buddy that just happened to be there. That's why I know all this. But then they went out for 2 days on his $376 million yacht, um, almost 400 feet. And Belichick and his teenage girlfriend had the entire second floor, and I think that was so that the crew could get her pablum on time and have her diapers delivered. Um, so um, and everybody that got on the boat had to sign an NDA. And so my buddy was on the boat and boat, yeah, yacht. And everybody had to, when they left, the security, con security had to go through their phones to make sure they hadn't taken any pictures on the boat. So that's how strong the NDA was. Bottom line was
Holy cow.
Belichick turned down over $50 million to coach Jacksonville. So that tells me, um, and Florida would have been good for him because I think the girlfriend becomes legal when she turns 16 for Belichick. So would have been a good state for him. However, the fact that he turned down, an unimaginable amount of money tells me that he's probably going to stay at North Carolina.
Yeah.
Now, Jerry Johnson, you know, he may put enough out there to pay the $50 million rider that to get Belichick out of the contract because he certainly has that kind of money. But I think Belichick is probably too strong of a coach for
Mhm.
Jerry.
Yeah.
I don't think Belichick would become a yes guy for Jerry. And so I don't think Dallas is a good fit for Belichick.
No, absolutely not, because you have the super egos, right? They always talked about the Patriot
Yeah.
way and what he established there. And yeah, I don't think that would not be a good mix. That would be like
Vegas would
no in
be
Alabama.
Vegas would be better for him. Vegas would be better for him because Davis's girlfriend is about the same age as Belichick's girlfriend. So
Recent.
they could have pajama parties together and all that kind of stuff that kids that age do. So that might be better for
Yeah, it's quite possible, right? And yeah, I was shocked that he didn't go into the coaching carousel last year. Like we saw Raheem Morris being hired in Atlanta, and kind of that again, the younger generation getting in. But now we hear rumors of maybe Pete Carroll taking the Bears job. I mean, shoot, these guys. I bet it's just I guess it's once it's in your blood, it's in your blood.
him. Well, yeah, and I mean, you recycle these guys. It's just like Vrabel gets back in, and it's just like it's almost like the National Hockey League, where if you get fired as a coach by one team, you're hired by another team within weeks or months.
Jim
Um,
Montgomery.
and so it's just a constant recycle of very seldom new guys get it. Well, there's obviously some, but the old guard just seems to flip and flip and flip and end up in another team. So the NFL is a bit like that. The younger coaches are doing much better now. So that makes me wonder how much the game has changed. That maybe Belichick isn't as relevant now as he was, when he was winning Super Bowls.
Yeah, I
Hard
mean,
to,
yeah, it is hard to tell because that game has more or less changed. When I watch the NFL game now, I feel like I'm watching more of a CFL game on a narrower field.
yeah.
Would that be a good perception to have, or am I off base there?
Yeah, no, I don't think you're that wrong. I don't think you're that wrong.
Hmm.
Anyway, that's my take on the NFL.
No
Gonna be
worries.
it's gonna be exciting weekend, gonna be exciting national championship game on Monday night.
Hmm.
So man, they screwed that up so bad, those rankings. I mean, how they let those two SAC teams in the the bye week 4. Ohio State should not have had to play, or Oregon should not have had to play Ohio State in the first round.
Right.
Oregon was undefeated. They should have had a patsy in the first round.
Hmm.
They should have had Boise State,
Yeah.
or somebody like that, or Arizona State,
Yeah.
who had no business, as it showed on the field, even being on the field with teams that were infinitely better.
Hmm.
And so I have no problem with the two teams that have made it to the final. I'm a little disappointed that the guys that were in the bottom, the top two teams in the country, Oregon and Georgia, had to have the opponent they had in their first round. They got beat, no question, and overmatched. Oregon was overmatched by Ohio State.
It was like 31-0. I'm like, what?
Yeah, and so, but I don't think that I don't know if they'll change the system at all. But Texas never made it, so none of the teams out of the SEC made it. So I think that means that I think we'll have a good championship game. I honestly think Ohio State will win, but in my heart, I sort of pull for the underdog. So Notre Dame will be the underdog, and it should be a great, hopefully it'll be a great championship game and not a blowout. Um, and then, obviously the day before, Saturday and Sunday, we have a great weekend of football coming up. Saturday and Sunday NFL, and then the national championship. Man,
Yeah.
the only downfall of that is that's the day that the idiot gets. That's the day Elon Musk gets in as president, right?
Yeah, that's January 20th. That's the rumor.
Yeah. So once Elon becomes, it's Elon that gets to be president, right?
Um, yeah, I don't follow. No, I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, so one of those doofuses gets in, and so it'll be all on. Thankfully, the national championship game will come on TV. I don't know what you're like about this kind of stuff, and this is in a way sort of liberating. The day of the U.S. election, I discontinued CNN on my TV. I took it off my guy
No way. Okay.
because And it's been the calmest month of my life because I'm not saying I was addicted, but I mean,
Right.
I watched CNN with my morning coffee and then it was on in the background all day.
Yeah. You and me
And,
both.
unless there's a national disaster, which there is right now,
Right.
um, you know, I don't miss it. And so coincidentally, you know, I'm assuming CNN has had a lot of the LA story, although I haven't watched CNN, so I don't know. But I've been watching KTLA in LA,
Mm,
which was nonstop coverage.
yeah.
And so, unless there's a disaster, when CNN came on the air, they were famous for covering disasters. You're way too young to know. But when CNN came on the air, I think it was like 80 or 81. Um, Immediately the Falkland War started. That you don't even know what that's all about.
No, I don't.
Okay, so it was a war that the Brits fought over the Falkland Islands. Okay, and so it was the first wire to wire. CNN was live from the Falkland Islands and live from Argentina, the entire for like a month it seemed. And so it was a disaster. It was like they were covering like war. And then, of course, they covered, you're too young to know this too, but there was a plane crash in Washington. A plane left National Airport, hit the Potomac, hit a bridge, and went into the Potomac, and that was nonstop for a month, or 3 weeks, CNN. So it was disaster coverage. And then you probably are old enough to remember the Iraq War, where Peter Arnett was on top of a building with a little baby satellite dish reporting live throughout the Afghan War. And then there's the Afghan War, then there's, the Iraq War. So that's what CNN was. And then all of a sudden, I guess in 2016, when he decided to run, it became political. And all those networks that were basically news networks became political networks. And so I don't even know where we started this conversation, other than to tell you that I turned off CNN. So I don't care what happens. Oh, I know. We started talking about what happens next Monday.
Right, next Monday. It's the national
Yeah, when
championship
when
game.
when Elon Musk gets the presidency. Um, then thankfully that night there's great, I hope, great entertainment in the national championship. Who you got?
I have the no. I got Notre Dame. They got the. I don't follow college that closely, but they do have something going on. Ryan Day seems a bit too cocky for his own self. But yeah, I think it's going to be a great game. I mean, shoot, you had Notre Dame knocking off Georgia, and then that Penn State game. I mean, they were down 10-0 early, coming back and winning.
No,
Uh,
I thought Penn State had that.
yeah.
I thought Penn State had that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've got a great buddy who played at Penn State, and I know that he would have been glued to that TV down in Florida.
Yeah.
You're too young to know the guy's name is Don Jonas. He was the first Shenley winner for the Bombers, and
Name sounds familiar. Yeah.
yeah, and so they claim that the east side stands of the old stadium would never have been built had Jonas and Mac Heron and Thorpe in
Mhm.
'73 been so good that there was such an influx of need for tickets that they built the East Side Grandstand. So it was often called the stands that Jonas built. But he's in his 80s now and suffering a little bit from some form of memory loss. But
Mhm.
he was a Penn State guy through and through. And no matter what, if Penn State was on TV, he played fullback for Penn State and then became quarterback for some Orlando team in whatever the predecessor to the USFL, Continental Football League. Continental Football League. We're talking 1970, 71, 72. And then he went from that. Leo Cahill hired him as the quarterback. He was the quarterback for the Argos.
Hmm.
So him and Tom Wilkinson were the Argo quarterbacks. And then the Argos signed Joe Theismann, and they brought in Joe Theismann the year after he won the Heisman, and another college quarterback, Greg Barton, and that's how Jonas ended up in Winnipeg, and Wilkie ended up in Edmonton. So that's your history lesson for the day.
But you know what? And that's why I have people on here because, like I say, I don't know everything. So I mean, it's
Yeah. Well, no, I mean I'm talking about something from the '70s. You weren't
yeah,
born yet.
yeah.
So yeah, so that's how Jonas ended up in Winnipeg, where he became like Bobby Hall. In fact, Bobby and him were in every second commercial together. They were like the legends of Winnipeg for 3 years, and then Earl Lunsford and Bud Riley decided that he was too big for his britches. They win the game in Saskatchewan, the Labor Day Classic, and he gets traded after the game, after they just won and then he goes to Hamilton, and Chuck Ely comes here. And Don lived here for about 2 more years. In fact, he worked late night sports for me at CKY for a winter. And
Nice.
then that got him a gig with CBC as their analyst for a year with Chevy. Um, and then they moved back to Florida, where he was the first head coach of University of Central Florida, which is now a pretty big program. In
Yes, there
fact,
is.
there's been a couple of bombers come from UCF.
Yeah.
And so I guess maybe 6 years ago, Roy Rosmus and Scott Taylor wrote the third of their series of books on the bombers, and it was about Jonas. And so they brought him to town to do the book signing, and we had the big press conference at Canada, and everybody who was anybody was there, and the next day when the Bombers played, um, actually the day before I took them out to the stadium to watch the practice. This is a good story. And Mike O'Shea, when the practice ends, Benny, is it Benny Tom? No, who's from UC? I can't remember the halfback that the bomber safety that played at UCF. Anyway, he came over and they hugged it out because he'd been his coach. And then O'Shea's coming off the field. We're not talking. There's nobody left but a kicker and O'Shea. And I've never met Mike O'Shea. And so we're near the tunnel, and as O'Shea gets closer, I say, "Coach, you got a minute?" He comes over and I introduce myself and I said, "This is Don Jonas, the very first Schenley winner for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers." And Mike was a Schenley winner with the Argos. So two Schenley winners. So they, shake hands, start talking. He brings Don into the dressing room. And this is great. And Don's got an old bomber jacket because like maybe 3 years before that they flew in Jonas and Dieter Brock and they had Don Huffnagel, Tommy Clements. They had all the old bomber quarterbacks for one game. And so he had a jacket on from that era, which was definitely not fashionable. And so O'Shea brings him into the dressing room, and he calls Brad Foddy, the equipment manager, over,
Mhm.
and he introduces Brad to Jonas, and he said, "Get Mr. Jonas every piece of coaching paraphernalia, every piece of coaching clothing that our coaches have, and put it in a bag and bring it over here to Mr. Jonas." So that's the kind of guy Mike O'Shea is.
Yeah.
My respect for him went up immensely.
Yeah.
Don left with every piece that the current coaches wore on the sideline. So that was pretty cool. And then the next day, on Bob Irving's pregame show, he had Jonas on as a guest because Bob was here when Bob had just come here the year Jonas was still playing for the
That's
Bombers.
right. Yeah.
And so on Irving's show, um, Wade Miller shows up and signs Don to a 1-day contract so that he can officially retire as a Blue Bomber, even though his last CFL game was with Hamilton. So
Nice.
that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and those types of stories, right? Like it's O'Shea doesn't forget about the past. He understands the CFL. So I'm not that doesn't surprise me what it
Yeah.
takes, right? And that, again, that's to the present. That's why players like to come here as well,
Yeah.
right? So that all builds on that culture and everything else. Um, how do you kind of see the Bombers? I know we're in January; it's kind of a ways away, but the Bombers are signing guys.
Yeah. You know what?
How do you see it?
My fear is at quarterback, and I hate to say this. My fear is at quarterback that with Strevler healthy, I don't think he's the answer as the backup. I'm sorry to say. I don't think he's the answer.
Right. Yeah.
And so I don't think they can lose the kid that backed up Caleres because, as you know, in this league, every starting quarterback is one hit to the head away from being out for an extended period of time. And Caleres has such a history of concussions.
Mhm.
And so my fear, I think the law, I mean, they've got some decisions at receiver to make. Um, with Willie back, that gives the defensive line the impetus they need. I see a lot of guys coming back on board. The grass isn't always greener because of the salary cap implications. Um, certain teams are going to go over it and have to pay a luxury tax. That's just guaranteed. But, you know, hypothetically, let's say BC is an option. Well, that's great. I mean, they got a great practice facility. They've got a great home playing facility. Their owners pouring a ton of money into the marketing finally.
Mm.
But try to find housing, economical housing in Vancouver.
Yeah,
So, you might make 20 grand or 30 grand more than you made in Winnipeg, but it'll cost you 50 grand more in housing.
exactly.
So is that a win? I don't think so. And so, it happens like this every year. I'm a little surprised with the quarterback switching that has gone on where Bethel Thompson gets going to Montreal. He signed a new contract I see this morning. So obviously these guys that were making 450, they're now going to make 200. But is that better than nothing? You know? And so and now with the Canadian dollar the way it is, it's like 200 becomes 120 US. And so all these quarterbacks making 450, 500,000, like Collaros,
600.
one of the highest paid. Rourke is probably the highest paid, but Collaros wouldn't be far behind, and Chad Kelly. Um, I don't think there'll be a whole lot of movement that'll affect the on-field product that they start to, they seem to have in reserve players who might start on another team. But O'Shea is so smart that he's got guys on his practice roster um, that could probably play on other teams. And so, yeah, they're going to lose a guy here, a guy there, but they're not going to. They might lose Augustine, but their star running back is going nowhere. He doesn't want to live anywhere else. You know,
He loves it here.
so it's not like they're going to lose that. I don't know if Dalton Schoen is healthy enough that I would spend the money. He remember with the end of his career, Weston Drexler, how superstar, like freaking unbelievable, but just at the end of his career, always got injured. And so that's my fear of Schoen. Once you have that one serious injury, are you one step away from having it again? And so I don't know if I break the bank for him. I think he may go elsewhere and hopefully stays healthy and has a great career. But I wouldn't put all my money on him or on Chris Streveler.
Yeah, totally.
Sorry, that's just my feeling because I
No,
don't think if Collaros goes down, I don't think Streveler is strong enough to be a number one guy.
no, well, exactly, right. And it may be the unpopular opinion, but let's just be honest. In 2019, the wheels were coming off, and then Caloris came to the rescue, and yeah, O'Shea said, "Well, he's just kind of here." Well, we kind of all knew what was going to happen, and it just, yeah, sure, he had that good Banjo Bowl game, and I know we're going 5 years back on the clock, but it you have to upgrade on your offensive line. Like even with the Chiefs, they talk about it too. The offensive line doesn't matter with the receivers or Pacheco like you have to have a good offensive line. We know this.
Yeah.
That is.
And a quarterback who can, scramble like crazy, which Mahomes can do.
Mhm.
And that makes a huge difference. And
Right.
so, Collaros is mobile, but he's not as elusive as say Ford in Edmonton. So the next month will be interesting.
Yes.
There'll be movement, but I would think for every person they lose, they'll replace with somebody from somebody else's free agency roster.
Hmm.
It just seems this is the time of the year where guys think the grass is greener and they make a decision based on $5,000, $10,000 that it might have been just as easy to stay where you are.
Yeah, we saw that years ago with Kenny Lawler going to Edmonton, and then well, he came back to Winnipeg.
Yeah.
It is a unique year for the Bombers. O'Shea's in his last year of his contract. The Bombers are hosting the Grey Cup. Uh, I don't know if there's any more added pressure to that. No guarantees you'll get back, but um, yeah, it's a unique year, and it'll be fascinating to see how it all unfolds.
I mean, I don't see O'Shea going anywhere, although um, you can bet that there are NFL teams that have shown interest or will
Mhm.
show interest. I'm not saying as the head guy to start with. Um, there will be U.S. major colleges that have interest based on his success here. But he's about as loyal as anybody I've ever met in football. And if his loyalty lies in Winnipeg, um, it might they might have to break the bank to keep him. But I don't see him leaving unless it's a very attractive U.S. position. I don't see him leaving for another Canadian Football League team, that's for sure.
Well, I mean, a few years ago, right? Oh, is he going to go join his buddy Pinball in Toronto? And then, well, they hired Dinwiddie, and that
Yeah.
didn't all happen. And I mean, yeah, he's past Bud Grant. I mean, the accolades and the culture he's built here is just tremendous, and he doesn't flinch.
No, no, he's like I don't know if his heart rate ever gets above 60. He's like up by 20, down by 20, same same sideline demeanor, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, yeah, and
Never seems to get.
yeah, for sure, and that's why they coach, and that's why us fans sweat it out when we take our kids to Labor Day. So.
Yeah, exactly. But so, free agency, this happens every year and there's always movement. And I don't think that I think that the thing that we should be thinking about in the CFL is how long does the commissioner stay in office? I mean, how long will it take to find a replacement? Because I don't see a whole lot getting done I'm not, I hate to say the word puppet, but that's what it is. You've got somebody who's already resigned, but is in the office until somebody comes in. Um, Obviously the Board of Governors would love to have a 10th franchise. Um, Atlantic Canada appears to be out.
Mhm.
Halifax, the mayor of Halifax is unmoving. City council there is unmoving about providing land and facilities for that land, roads and sewer and hydro, and so I don't see Halifax as an option. I don't see Moncton as an option. They're not going to play that Atlantic Canada game this year, so it narrows down the options of where you could put a 10th franchise, provided there is an ownership group. And here's where it's interesting because I personally know of two ownership groups, maybe three, multi-billionaires, but they're American. And is the CFL ready to take American ownership again? And one of these gentlemen owns an NFL team, and one of these gentlemen owns a NBA team and a Major League Baseball team. And the two markets that they're interested in, one is interested in Quebec City,
Mhm.
and one is interested in, you're going to love this, Windsor, Detroit.
Be awesome.
So, and both are willing to build 30,000 seat stadiums.
Mhm.
So I guess the question is, would the would a percentage of the population of Detroit come across the bridge, 7, 8 times a year to watch a team that was called Windsor Detroit. Their name would be in the team name. And would that be attractive to the CFL, having a franchise in small market Windsor, but accessible to London and all that, Welland, all that area? And how many fans would come across the bridge? 2,000, 5,000? That could make it economically viable. Um, so that would be one consideration. And then what about Quebec? Laval has a very good program. They have a stadium that would be adequate while one is built, which Windsor does not have. Um, that Laval program is like the envy of the country, but they have spurned all kinds of efforts from the CFL to go there, and I don't know if unless it was Quebecois money behind it, if they would even get to the stage of putting in a bid. You'd have to have Laval, you have to have the university on board, and I don't know if that's a possibility. But I guess those, in my mind, are the only two options. If Atlantic Canada is now out and they can't support it. There's not enough financial wherewithal or corporate sponsorship money in Atlantic Canada. So yeah, that was a great idea. Never got anywhere.
It makes sense from coast to coast. It makes sense, but
Oh, of course
realistically,
it
right?
does. Of
Yeah.
course it does. But if it doesn't make sense economically, and here's the thing, you have to build. The CFL is stagnant right now. The franchise values have not increased.
That is true. 100%.
Will a tenth franchise increase the value of each team, especially if like look at Montreal, they're owned by one of the richest guys in Canada,
Mhm.
and so will same with British Columbia. So would number one, would they accept American ownership again? Number two, would it enhance the value of the league to have a billionaire professional sport entrepreneur, even though it's from a different country, as an owner of a 10th team in the CFL? Now, you want your mind blown completely?
Yes, 100%. My mind is spinning here.
Let's just say hypothetically that these two or three billionaires that already own major franchises in the United States, NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, and they have about three or four other billionaire friends, and all of them own soccer franchises and stadiums in England. And are proposing a 16 CFL partnership of teams in England playing in these soccer stadiums. CFL rules.
Yeah.
One trip a year, each CFL team goes and plays the teams in England. Now that increases the value of every CFL team exponentially
Yes.
because that includes Sky Television all over Europe.
Mhm.
The value of every CFL franchise would go up considerably.
Yes.
So just blowing your mind on that. How would that go over? Would the CFL even accept that? Would the CFL Board of Governors even accept that?
I think there would have to, I think there would have to be some untaping of some dinosaur thinking, maybe. I would think because you can't just keep doing what you're doing. Like, I work in an organization where, they never rest on their laurels. They're always trying to improve themselves. You look at the NFL. Yeah, sorry, that's always the comparable, right? They go to Berlin, they go to Munich. They're all over. There's games from morning till night. They just don't miss a beat. They say, okay, we're X amount. We want to be more. We want to be all over. Peter King has talked about it. There should be another division overseas, like you're talking about hypothetically for the CFL.
Well, there will eventually be an NFL team in London, and I would suspect in Mexico City.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how quickly that'll happen, but I think that's the overall goal. That they only play 3 games a year over there, but from what Jeff Reinbold tells me, the whole UK, including Ireland and Scotland, are North American football crazy. The CFL game, because of all the motion, makes it more attractive than the NFL game. And so if they're crazy over North American football, I would think that I would think fan base wise, it would be automatic that I mean, these aren't 80,000 Wembley stadiums that these
No,
guys own. These are
no.
20,000, 25,000
Yeah.
stadiums. Now, the problem is the soccer field won't hold the CFL field. It'll hold the width and more,
Right.
but you'd have to play on a 100-yard field, not a 110-yard field.
Yeah.
So let's say each of these guys came in and put in a $12 million expansion fee to the CFL.
Hmm.
That's like to them chump change because it's only 8 million US. So say 6 teams came in and a 10th in Canada, each with a $12 million, maybe even go crazy, a $20 million Canadian franchise fee. Would that not enhance the value of the Canadian Football League and thus make every franchise worth more than it is right now?
I think it would, right? You need a maybe a bit of a kickstart to everybody. But yeah, I agree. Like the CFL, it's not what it once was 20 years ago. When I had Nick Lewis on, it's about promoting stars. So this also goes to that, right? Like it just you need that financial backing. You need more in your face. It just can't be, well, the games are on CBS Sports Network. Okay, that's part of it. Chris Berman does his fastest 3 minutes, Grey Cup highlights. But like the CFL game, it's the most exciting game. I think we can agree that it's the most exciting game of football style wise. The last 3 minutes are tremendous.
Yeah. And Boomer does a great job. He always sneaks in a CFL story
Yeah.
in his fastest 3 minutes. Boomer and I started the same year at ESPN. I did a show for 2 years on ESPN on the Canadian Football League.
Okay.
And Boomer and I started the same time, along with the late John Mee, Tom Mee, who I simulcast a number of hockey and gymnastics games with back in the early 80s. He tragically passed away in a swimming accident. But yeah, so that's how long Boomer and I started together, and I did a CFL show called From the 55-Yard Line in
Nice.
1981 and 82. 26-week series each year. So 52 weeks of shows I did on ESPN on the Canadian Football League. But it was nothing but promotion of the American players. So every highlight package, if a Canadian receiver scored a touchdown, that didn't get in the highlight package. If a receiver from Western Michigan got a 20-yard pass, that was in the highlight package.
Nice.
And so every highlight package was Warren Moon from Washington hits so and so from Arizona State, and so that was all the high. And then each show had a feature or two on a American player. Warren Moon was one of the first ones. In fact, they were staying at, I can't remember what it was called then, the Lombard, the Westin, the Winnipeg whatever it was called back then. That's where they were staying, and you'd never see something like this today. I picked Warren up in the CKY car, and I said, "This is a bad background right here." He said, "Well, let's go somewhere better." So we went across the Provencher Bridge and walked down by the waterfront and did the interview with the skyline. Of course, the Human Rights Museum wasn't there yet. Did the interview with the skyline of Winnipeg bag from the edge of the water as the background. What CFL player would do that today, where you pick them up in a car and say, "Hey, we're going to go drive around until we find a good shot."
Maybe
So,
Milt Stegall would have done it.
yeah,
Maybe.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is the athletes of that day versus the athletes of today are so insulated. You'd never get a Jet player to even come out and say hello to you outside of his little cocoon. Whereas, in fact, I had this conversation. We had a reunion, CKY reunion last week, and
I saw that. It was great.
Scott Brown, Scott Paulson and I and Vogelsang were telling stories about the guys we played golf with, or the guys we had dinner with, or Paulson would always go on fishing trips with the 4 or 5 guys, and how we played summer fastball with all these guys. And Scott Brown is going, "What? You what?" He said, "A player today never gets 1 second
Yeah.
of friendship time with anybody in the media. Back then, we were all just buddies. And you know what? The reason was back then, the teams valued the airtime and they valued any publicity you could give them because there wasn't 24-hour sports networks. TSN didn't start till 84. And so a lot of these guys, the teams encouraged media to be around all the time and give them, real access because they needed the publicity. There was only 3 stations. Back when I started, there was only 2. And then CKND came in, while KCND came in from North Dakota, and then it became CKND. And so even then, there was still no 24-hour sports. So the 6 o'clock sports was what you wanted your product on because people
Mhm.
watched it. There was a time when you're not going to believe this, but when there was a time when I think like 77 or something, or 70, 76 or 77, where CKY finally beat CBC in the 6 o'clock ratings. And at that time, CKY drew 125,000 viewers, CBC drew 102,000 viewers, and CKND did 62,000 viewers. So that was almost 300,000 people in a city of 600,000 that watched the 6 o'clock news.
That's incredible.
Those numbers wouldn't be in the 20s right now.
Yeah.
And so it was important for the sports franchises to have as much publicity on those newscasts on any of those stations that they could. And that's what's changed in today's world of, as you know, television. And Scott Brown got in late. I had already left, gone to the Blue Jays for 2 years, came back, and I was on MTN for 3 years. And that's when Scott was at CKY. And so he was at CKY like 97 to 99 and around there.
I remember that.
Um, and so he never realized that this existed before, that this whole, hey, you could be buddies with these guys. You could go fishing. You could go over for
Yeah.
dinner. They could come to your place for dinner. You know, crazy stories that occur out of those, that you'd never ever, like Paulson on one fishing trip. I don't know, Boschman and who else? Boschman, man, I can't remember, but 3 or 4 Jets and Paulson and a couple of his buddies were fishing out someplace past Riding Mountain. And I don't know, for some reason, Boschman ticked off Paulson about something. And so they stopped in Minnedosa at the famous Esso station or Petrocan station right on the highway for a bite to eat.
Mhm.
But before they got there, the first Boschman and the guys in the first car got there first. And in the follow car, Paulson is driving, and there's a dead skunk in the middle of the road. And so Paulson gets out with a garbage bag and picks up this dead skunk and puts it in the trunk. And then when he gets to the Petrocan, he opens up Boschman's car and shakes the bag and pitches the skunk in the back hatch and then covers it. And then they have lunch and that. They're all okay, everything's good. We're all buddies again. So now they get up to leave. And Paulson's car leaves, and Bosch gets in his car and gets about 20 feet They go, "What did we hit a skunk?" And the entire they finally find the skunk. They know who did it, and the cars. They had to defumigate the car when it got back to Winnipeg, as well as all their clothes and everything. So think of that happening with, I don't know, Mark Scheifele or something like that.
Yeah,
That would never
yeah,
happen.
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
for
because
sure.
you'd never be that close to the guy. But that's the kind of stories. We all had stories just like that of how, I had Ulf Nielsen over once back in the early 70s, Ulf and Anders and Gun Marie, and in that time Ulf's first wife Gun, now his second wife is Gun as well, which is weird. Anyway, we were in a new apartment, and one of our friends had gone away for the weekend, and could we look after their goldfish? And so we got this goldfish on the shelf, but we're having the Swedes over, and we're having fondue. Not the cheese fondue, the kind where you skewer a shrimp and you put it in, or piece of meat and you put it in. And they'd never drank a drink called Golden Cadillac. So I'm making all these Golden Cadillacs, and they're getting hammered. And anyway, make a long story short, before the night's over, Ulf skewers the goldfish, puts the goldfish in the grease, fries the goldfish, takes it out, dips it in the red sauce. Down the hatch goes the goldfish. Did you see that happening today? And so now, the next day, this is when Unicity still had a full mall, and they had a pet store. I go and I buy a goldfish. I dump the goldfish in the bowl, and our friends come back and they go, "Oh, fishy," or whatever name they gave them, and never knew to this day that Wolf Nielsen had wolfed down the goldfish. That's the kind of things we did. That's the kind of things we did in the olden days.
That's crazy. I'm chuckling. I'm having flashbacks to the fundraiser there for Lauren Coral and just chatting it out with Perfetti and Shifley, and they were concerned about their NFL fantasy roster, and I guess that's what you kind of
Yeah,
talked about with Common Point. But and years ago, yeah, I had coffee with Milt on a personal level, and he came to some functions. But what you're describing here is next level, no doubt.
yeah,
So
no.
good. Oh, that's great. It's awesome.
And I mean, I could bore you for 5 hours with my Bobby Hull stories, because we were notorious all over North America and Europe.
Yes.
And so that'd be a show for another day, because well, actually, it's coming up to the second anniversary of him
Yeah.
passing. In fact, it might even be today or tomorrow.
It's around this time because when I had you
Yeah,
on last, I say, hey, let's start off with Bobby Hall, and then that took about the full hour. So
man.
that's all good.
Anyway,
That was fresh. It's good.
this hour is pretty well close to being up, buddy.
It is. And you know what, Peter, again, thank you for coming on. And yeah,
Anytime.
we didn't even get to the Sun Bowl, but that's okay. There's always next time. It's good.
Exactly.
Yeah, and Happy New Year to you and your family.
Hey, same to you and your family. Hey, you've got a beautiful new facility out there, right?
Yeah, it is good. That's why I had Jeffrey Bannon on, and yeah, we're all excited about it. It's people inbox me pictures. They're like, "Don't publicize these," and then they're on actually the Southeast Event Center site.
How
It's
many seats?
2,500.
Nice, just nice.
Yeah, and then when there's concerts, obviously there'll be more people. So
Yeah,
rumors circulate that the Pistons may not be in the MJHL next year, but
that's great.
that's just what I hear.
That's great for the area.
Oh, it is. Steinbach is a hub,
Yeah,
and no question about it. It's an exciting time for the community.
great for the area.
It is definitely. All righty.
Okay,
Uh,
Steve, good talking to you, buddy.
Good talking to you too,
Hang
Peter.
in there.
Take care. All right. Bye bye.